I was not born an amputee. I was involved in a motorcycle wreck in August 2012. A guy ran a stop sign and hit us. My husband was driving the motorcycle and I was the passenger. And when he hit us, my husband was killed instantly and I was critically injured. I broke every bone in my right leg in just about every place you can break it. I had several open fractures. I had a really bad concussion. I was wearing a helmet, but my helmet had been knocked off. I had lots of abrasions on my face, chipped some teeth. I broke my thumb, had some road rash. So I was actually conscious right after impact, and I saw everything. I saw how bad my leg looked, and I actually thought to myself, okay, that's probably gone. It's not hurting, so I must be in shock. So at that point, my brain is going, okay, I'm probably going to pass out. I need to start telling people information. So at that point, there were paramedics around me, and I just started spitting out whatever I could think of, date of birth and allergies and where I lived and phone number and just all kinds of crazy stuff. I did keep asking for people to check on Joe, my husband, and I never noticed anybody checking on him, which it occurred to me later that I was probably unconscious for a minute or two right after, and somebody had checked on him then, and they already knew that he was dead. Nobody actually told me that. I just kind of figured it out from the conversations that were happening around me. So I was put into the ambulance, passed out there, and was on a ventilator for a week. I think the decision was made by family, doctors. I don't know who exactly made the call to try to save my leg, but I think they were really worried about when I woke up. They didn't know that I knew Joe was dead. And so they didn't want to have to tell me that I'd lost not only my husband, but also my leg at the same time. So they wanted to make an effort to save it. So I woke up a week later, and my surgeon was there on a Sunday morning and sat at the end of my bed and answered any questions that I had. He'd already done 3 surgeries at that point, and my leg was full of hardware. And he told me that I had about a 60% chance of it being functional again, but it would take a lot of surgeries. And he was realistic with me. He said if at any point I was tired of surgeries or I wasn't progressing like I thought I should, that he would stop. We would do whatever I decided. So if I decided right then to amputate, he would have. But I thought the 60% chance sounded okay. So I thought, all right, we'll give it a shot. So I did salvage surgeries for 3 years. I had 11 surgeries over the next 3 years, and there were bone grafts and muscle grafts and tendon grafts and putting more hardware in and taking hardware out and surgery on nerves. And I had infection after my 7th surgery and long battle with IV antibiotics. I had a PICC line for several months. And it was hard. It was a hard road. I was on all kinds of medication. I mean, the antibiotics long-term are not good for you. I was on painkillers, muscle relaxers, antidepressants, and all of those things cause other side effects and lead you to need other medications. And I was pretty much just miserable. So after 3 years, I decided that I would probably be more functional if I amputated the leg above the knee. So that's what I did in August of 2015. I was fit with my first prosthesis in early 2016, and it was the traditional socket prosthesis that you see, the socket that looks like a cup almost that your leg fits down into. And I did really well with that for about 1.5 years, almost 2 years. And then my femur started causing problems with extra bone growth and spurs, and I would have scar tissue at the ends of nerves. It's called a neuroma, and all of that's really painful when you're inside that socket. So I would have revisions to fix those issues, and they would grow back within 3 to 6 months. So I would repeat, do the revision again, same thing would happen. And each surgery to revise it was making my limb shorter and shorter, which in turn makes it a lot more difficult to fit the socket onto the limb. When you only have this much and you're trying to encompass it in something to be stable, it's pretty difficult. So eventually my limb got short enough, and even though I had a new bone spur growing, my surgeon said that he didn't want to do any more revisions because this was late 2019 and there was talk of osseointegration being FDA approved in the United States. And he said, I don't want to do any more surgery because if I make you any shorter, I think it's going to knock you out of being able to be a candidate for osseointegration in the future. So basically, we stopped trying surgeries. And then osseointegration was approved in 2020. I met with a surgeon at Emory in Atlanta, which is about 2.5 hours away from where I live in Montgomery, and started the process. They did a bunch of scans. They did a CT scan. They 3D printed models of my limb because I was shorter than the recommended guidelines. But they took those 3D models and they made custom implants. They did trial runs of the surgery on those models several times, ran a lot of tests on it, checked the sturdiness of everything, and decided it would be okay to give it a shot. They thought I had a good chance of being successful. So in October of 2021, so just over a year ago, I had the first surgery to implant the anchor in my femur.
Okay.
And then 3 months later, in January of this year, they came in and placed the abutment, which is the metal part that sticks out of my limb. So osseointegration, let me back up. It's, if you know how dental implants work, it's the same idea. They'll go in and place an anchor in the bone and come back once that's healed and kind of screw in a tooth. Mm-hmm. So it's the same idea, just for a leg instead of a tooth. So a little bit bigger production there. But yeah, so that was finished at the end of January. And I went through several months of building up my weight-bearing tolerance and started attaching my full prosthesis at the end of April, and could barely put any weight on it or take any steps or utilize the knee at all. It took a while. So I was still using both crutches, and then I progressed to one crutch and then the cane. And I'm wobbling around my house without holding on to anything most of the time, but anytime I leave my house or long distance, I'm still taking my cane just for stability and support. I didn't walk for about 3 years, so I had a lot of atrophy, and it's taken some time to build it back up. Plus, my limb is so much shorter now, I don't have as much muscle even left to help control everything. So I don't know how well I'll walk once I'm completely healed, but I'm so much better than I was a year ago, 3 years ago. I'm in a much better place. I'm very grateful that osseointegration was an option for me.
Wow. That is awesome. Honestly, a lot of things I did not expect.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah.
I don't know where to start, but I'm going to start somewhere.
Okay.
And the biggest thing is motorcycle accident.
Yeah.
That's tough. And I say that's tough because you don't expect to lose someone when you're going for a ride or going to a destination.
Right.
So you somewhat glanced over it. I don't know if you want to get into this, but how were you and how was your mindset knowing that your husband passed away?
I mean, my whole world was flipped upside down. We had been married 17 months exactly to the day. So it's a big shift. You go from 2 incomes to 1, having a partner to help you do everything, your best friend who's always there. I mean, it's a total shift. You have all these plans made for the future about jobs and kids and where you want to live eventually and trips you want to take, and everything's just ripped away. So it took a while to really let everything sink in and realize kind of who I was without Joe. Not to say that my entire identity was Joe, but I mean, so much of your life and what you plan once you get married is connected to that other person. So yeah, it was like having to figure out who I was all over again, not only without him, but kind of without my functionality as well. There was a lot of therapy involved.
I bet it's therapy. Yeah, to see a loved one pass in front of you.
Yeah.
That's going to need, like you said, a lot of therapy.
Yeah. There are things that you cannot unsee that you wish you
Right.
could. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Stupid question, but might be a right question. Hopefully you have not gone onto a motorcycle, or have you?
So people ask me this all the time. I know
Yeah.
a lot of amputees who lost their limb riding and they still ride.
Hmm.
It's not for me. I've been back on a motorcycle one time just to prove to myself that I could,
Hmm.
but I'm done. I won't do it now. I miss it. I really do, but it's just not worth. It's not worth the risk. I mean,
Yeah.
and everything I saw that day, I don't want to see that again, and I don't want anybody else to see that. So
Great.
I'm just not going to do it.
That's good. Well, it's good. Again, like it's everyone has their own way of healing and
Sure.
really just moving on, and that is the right answer, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Um, that's tough. That's really tough. Going through all this surgery, hospital, all that other stuff. And I realized what I was trying to say in the very beginning, life expectations. Um, when you're younger, prior to accident, or is there anything now that you wish or you were looking forward to doing, I guess full limb, if that's right? Or like without the amputee, or is there, or are you still
Yeah.
able to do those things?
I mean, for the most part, I can still do anything that I want to do. I
Mhm.
might have to figure out a really different way of doing it, and it might take me 4 or 5 times as long, but I can still do that. I think as far as like how I expected my life to look, I did always think that I would have kids. And
Mhm.
that's something that I wanted with Joe. I mean, we had just started talking about trying to have kids.
Mhm.
So that's something I always envisioned. And now, I mean, I'm still young enough, I still could, but I think my whole perspective has shifted as far as my body as a whole. And that might sound kind of selfish, but
Oh, yeah.
um, I mean, at the same time, my body's already been through a lot, a lot of surgeries, a lot of radiation with imaging, a lot of medications. I don't even know if it's possible for me to have kids at this point, honestly. Um, it would shift a lot of things as far as my weight and center of gravity. So you have to factor that in. I mean, not
Oh
that
yeah.
amputees can't have kids. I know
Yeah.
plenty of amputees who have, but it would just it's a whole different thing to have to adjust to. Once again, making an
Mhm.
adjustment. So I think that's a big thing that changed about what I expected for my life. Um, with osseointegration, at least for the first 2 years, they don't want you to do any running or jumping or anything high impact. Not that I was an avid runner before, but it'd be nice to have that option. Um, I'm not going to be mad that I can't run a marathon. That's fine. I don't have to train for it. It's great. So, I mean, just little things like that. But overall, I can pretty much do whatever I want to do.
That's good. That's really good. And what I was talking about earlier, have you got those, I guess, compliments or comments when you're going out and people see you either walking around with the prosthetic? And how do you feel about that?
So, most of the time, I really don't mind, especially when as people notice the osseointegration, because it does look different. And
Mhm.
a lot of people, especially in this area, I mean, it's not offered anywhere in this state. So when somebody sees it and they ask questions about it, I'm happy to answer just so I can educate. They can realize that it's another option that amputees have. I get frustrated sometimes when I'm in a hurry at the grocery store. Like I just want to go buy eggs and leave, and like 5 people will stop me and ask me what happened. I mean, it's gonna happen though. I mean, I'm pretty open about it. I wear shorts all the time. It's gonna show, so people are gonna ask. It's just be appropriate with your questions, you
That's
know.
true.
That's the main thing. I get a lot of inappropriate questions
Mhm.
on social media, and that just comes with the territory. So,
That makes sense.
yeah.
So how does a prosthetic work? To be honest, because from
Yeah.
what I'm envisioning, I'm not sure if I'm correct on this. Is it your leg all the way up into your knee is your leg, or is it knee down?
So, I'll try to back up and show if I
Mhm.
can. So, I'm amputated above the knee.
Oh, okay.
and my prosthetic just screws in.
Hmm.
I have this metal part that sticks out of my limb
Yeah.
and it just screws in.
Mhm.
Here's the whole leg. It has a knee that bends and everything.
See, that was my so that's where I was going with that. So again, I
Okay.
don't know how prosthetic works in general.
Yeah.
Because the last person I did the interview with, she still had her leg up until the knee. So
Okay.
how does bending work in that aspect? Because is it just the shift of weight?
Yeah. So there are different kinds of prosthetic knees. Mine is a microprocessor. Um, it's real fancy. It has hydraulics. It has a
Oh, awesome.
gyroscope. So like it's calibrated for my height and weight,
Mhm.
and it bends according to where it is in space, how much
Mhm.
weight I put on it, how I distribute that weight. So it's a learning curve for sure. And then of course, because of all those computer parts, it's not waterproof. So I have a different knee that's just like a mechanical hinge knee, operates totally differently. So a lot of times I'll just lock it straight because
Yeah.
my mind doesn't flip the switch that quickly to, okay, this knee is going to just collapse on me.
Mhm.
So a lot of times I'll just lock it straight for safety, but I only use it at the beach or at the pool, sometimes in the
Exactly.
shower.
Yeah, and that's where I was going with in the previous question when I asked
Yeah.
you, are those things that you can't do anymore, i.e., swimming, for example, like you need to have like that's good that you just lock it straight. Then you just like
Yeah.
going along. That's great that that works.
Yeah.
But again, with the whole microchip and so on and so forth,
Hmm.
how is that like, for example, plane rides going through security? Is it just is
I
there
get
any aspect to that or no?
I get swabbed for
Yeah.
bomb
Okay.
residue every time, but
Hmm.
that's about it. Now amputees, they're not allowed to make you take off your shoes because it's such
Hmm.
a pain in the butt to try to put shoes on a fake foot that you can't articulate.
That's true.
Um, but I mean, I just expect to get pulled to the side and swabbed for residue,
Mhm.
but that's fine. Just allow extra time for it.
Yeah, that's good. That's really
Yeah.
good. So you mentioned earlier, I can't say the word osteo.
Osseointegration.
Okay, you
You can
seem
call
very
it OI for short.
OI. That's even
Yeah.
much better. OI.
Yeah.
So with OI, you seem an advocate for it, and I guess it's because of what it's did to you
Sure.
throughout the last, I guess, years or months. Well, months in a sense. Um, so are you like one of the first in your state, or
I don't know if I'm the first I'm probably not the first in my state. I'm definitely not the first in the country.
Mhm.
They were doing it at Walter Reed first, I believe, for veterans.
Mhm.
I'm social media friends with a veteran who I believe was one of the first to have this particular implant. There are several companies out there that make implants. The Integrum Opera implant is the only one that's FDA approved so far, I believe. But there's going to be more and more options for it in the future. So I did just get asked to be an ambassador for Integrum. So full disclosure, I'll be pumping them up even more.
Mhm.
But I'm excited about it. It's been a really life-changing thing for me. Nothing but positive so far. So I'm happy to educate other people about it and hopefully help some other people change their lives as well.
That's really good. That's really good.
Yeah.
And that's why I like this podcast. It's people have experience and really is a educational platform.
Right.
I'm not just saying like, hey, guess what? Yes, you were a victim. Now you are a survivor and overcomer of
Right.
the thing that victimized you. So it's
Right.
nice to hear that and again see that silver lining in regards to it, that
Yeah.
there are help out there that people need and will need in the future. So it's good to know.
Yeah. I mean, I think some days it's hard to look at tragedy
Mhm.
and decide that anything good can come out of that. But I don't know, it's a big perspective shift for me to sit back and see kind of the whole story and where I am now. And yeah, it's a bad thing that happened. It sucks. I wish I didn't have to go through it, but it doesn't have to be the end of the world. You can take that and turn it into something positive. There's always something good to find. It might take you a few years to find it, but there's
Mhm.
always something good there.
Very true. Very, very true. I love exactly what you just said there, because a lot of us, we look at tragedy and we just think it's just tragedy, not
Right.
realizing that with, unfortunately say, with every tragedy, there's always positivity with it.
Hmm.
It really is. We learn from our mistakes, and we learn
Absolutely.
not just our mistakes, but in case something happens, we learn how to do things.
Right.
For example, and going with what you said with the crutches and the cane, I that was me last year. I actually had hip surgery on my
Yeah.
right hip, and I'm just like, this sucks. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of things I've learned in that downtime of mine, was really how to function and how to learn new skills. And that's exactly what I did. You kind of have to use those times where, I'll say, you put a pause in life
Hmm.
to build back yourself up again, and to
Yeah.
build yourself even stronger. Therefore, once you fully recover, or to the point where you're normal in that aspect, then you can be like, okay, well, now I'm better than what I was before. So
Yeah.
you really have to kind of use those moments to take that pause and see what else is out there, and really enhance yourself. So it's
Right.
good to know. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's excellent. Last question, or I think I have for you,
Okay.
and in which we mentioned, was family. Like, how did your whole family take, one, the accident, and two, the full adjustment? Because I guess I guess in the beginning, stairs were probably a problem.
Yeah.
Walking was probably like those things. Like, how did you, or how did your family help you to adjust with those things, and anyone significant others near you as well?
Yeah. So I would not have survived without my family for sure. Um, the house that Joe and I lived in was 2 stories, so
Mm.
lots of stairs. All of the bedrooms were upstairs. The full bathrooms were upstairs. So staying at my house was a no-go. When I first got out of the hospital, my parents took me home to their house, and they had on it. They had just built a new house and downsized, so they really didn't even have the room for me. But they made room, took me in. Um, did everything for me. I mean, with how my leg was set, it was kept straight and had to be propped up at all times. And so they're the ones who had to give me sponge baths, try to wash my hair, get my food, get my medication, drive me to appointments. I mean, they really kind of had to shift their whole schedule. Luckily, my dad was kind of on his way into retirement.
Mhm.
So he had enough free time where he could still take care of me and get me to appointments while my mom was working. I have a younger brother who has Down syndrome, and he also lives with my parents. So he was my buddy through it all. He brought me a bell that I could ring if I needed something. I didn't really use it, but he'd pop in and check on me. So yeah, they were a big help. And then once I got to the point where I was okay with going home and just trying to sit and inch myself up the stairs, I did have friends who lived nearby that would come check on me, come get me out of the house, take me to dinner, find things to do just to kind of break up the monotony of just
Yeah,
sitting there healing. I mean, there's only so much Netflix you can watch.
yeah, yeah.
So it gets a little old after a while, but yeah, I've really got an amazing community here in Montgomery. Families here. I have a ton of good friends. I wasn't ever lacking for anything. I'll say that.
That's really good. Support
Hmm.
is huge, especially when you go through
Yeah,
tragedy.
it
Yeah,
is. It is. So,
awesome. Any final words that you'd like to say?
I don't think so. I just appreciate you taking the time. I hope I've opened your eyes a little bit more to above the knee amputation as well as
Yes.
osseointegration. Maybe you'll learn how to say it one day.
Just have to replay this over and over again.
Yeah, yeah, you'll get it. You'll pick it up.
Osseointegration. I think I got it.
Yeah, you got it. Sounds great. That's
Perfect.
That's it.
Well, it's been a pleasure, and thank you for, one, being strong, being courageous, being an advocate for a lot of things. And hopefully people will watch this and say, hey, guess what? Despite the situation I am in, there's alternatives, and I could live, I guess, happier life than anything else.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to talk with you.